Remember the video I did a couple weeks ago about the housing crisis? And I told you that there was a woman who predicted the housing crisis, a financial expert. Remember that? This is her. And she has a new prediction. The Oracle of Wall Street expands on why the crisis of the American male will send home prices crashing 30%, gaming rampant loneliness, and not enough single woman buyers. Let's get into it. Her name is Meredith Whitney. Last time I can remember her name. She's known as the Oracle of Wall Street, predicted the financial crisis, and she said that young single men basically failing and flailing, as Bourbon Bougie likes to say, and still living at home, and the crisis of the American male is going to mean fewer people buying homes. And she predicts a 30% drop in housing crisis, but she thinks it's not the end of the world. It's not going to be like pandemic levels. It's not going to be like another housing crisis like in 2008. And about 40% of home buyers, she says later on, have their mortgage paid off. And they're going to be pissed about losing equity, but it's not going to be a big disaster, as big of a disaster as in the past. Here's where she talks about the equity. There's not going to be a lot of collateral damage, but people just on paper will be worth less than they thought they were. It's not that dramatic because we've had so much massive inflation from the zero interest rate policy. Up top, she mentions the 40%. Here's the interesting thing, though. On the other hand, those who missed the mark and didn't buy a home before the run-up in prices during the pandemic might be happy. But let's go back to the premise. Young men who are actually only part of the equation, which she explains later. As more young men are single, Pew Research, blah, blah, blah. Whitney referred to this analysis in her thinking when she made this prediction. And this is telling. Quote, unless you're creating a household, there's no reason to buy a house. She sees more supply and not enough demand in the coming years because with the silver tsunami, like all the baby boomers retiring and dying, and single men not buying houses and people not getting married and more people remaining single, and there's not enough single female buyers to pick up the slack, the housing prices are going to fall. Right now, we don't have enough housing to meet the demand. There's a housing crisis right now because a lot of people need housing and there isn't a lot available. But in the coming years, it's going to flip. That Pew Research study talking about the single men, that was from 2019, I believe. But there's that other study, that Morgan Stanley did that said that, half of women of childbearing age will be single by 2030. 2030 is 5.5 years away. I'm thinking that's when the housing prices are going to really, really dip. I hope they start dipping before that because I'm actually thinking about buying a house in like 2026, 2027. I love it when we have these situations in history and politics when these very traditional conservative ideas end up biting us in the ass. Because the people who are into traditional family values are usually really into money too. Because conservative fiscal policies result in conservative family policies, conservative social policies. So anyone who tells you, oh, I'm fiscally conservative but socially liberal, they're full of shit. This is a great trick if you're at a dinner party with one of these people. Ask them the following questions. What fiscal policies are you in favor of? Let them answer. And then ask them, what kind of results do those policies cause? And watch them fumble. And then you'll be able to point out to everybody around you that, yeah, they're full of shit because they're just a conservative. So when you hear fiscally conservative, socially liberal, just think conservative because they are. Later in the article, she mentions the 5 Ds of home buying. Diapers, diamonds, divorce, debt, and death. Without those, I don't think there's going to be a big enough driver. Years ago, I was frustrated because when I was looking for a home to buy, I wasn't looking for a large home. I'm looking for like a small house, like a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. Like I really would like a single family home in Chicago one day, but I don't want a really big house because I don't need one. It's just me. I need an extra room for an office and maybe a room for a guest room. So 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms tops. That even would feel big because this house already feels big. It's 3 levels, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, a full kitchen, a living room, garage. And this still feels big because I essentially have a 3rd bedroom I'm not using. I have a lower level. So I'm essentially living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house now, and it's too much. It's a little too big for me. But the kind of houses that the market usually offers are 4-bedroom, 3 and 4-bedroom houses, because the housing market caters entirely to families still. But less than half of American households fit that demographic anymore. Less than half of American households are married people with children. The rest is single people, single mothers, relatives living together, retirees, etc. So I'd like to see two things happen. In addition to the prices of the housing go down, I would like to see the style of housing that's available in new construction change dramatically. I want to see housing developments that are smaller, more walkable, more communal based, with lots of bike paths and walking paths and things like that. Maybe a couple of playgrounds for the people that have kids, but also things for adults to do, like community centers or coffee shops or bookstores, things like that. More third places, as they say, third places to hang out, because we have your home and your office, or home or your workspace. And a lot of people, home and workspace is the same. I work remotely. My workspace, my office is right upstairs, which I'm about to go up to now because I got a lot to do today. But while I was here finishing my coffee scrolling through the news, I found that article. So the second thing I'd like to see happen, I'd like to see people completely reimagine the way that we live, because we have to. I think policymakers right now, probably due to the fact that most of them are old or older, they're still thinking like it's 30 years ago. They still are thinking about the nuclear family with every single policy decision they make, whether it's housing, healthcare, all these things. We have to start thinking of people as individuals, and we have to start thinking of our towns and counties as communities, because we are individual people with individual needs, but we are part of a community. And instead, up until now, we've thought of nothing but the family unit when it comes to economics, which really, when you think about it, they're talking about a man, his wife, and his kids, like possessive. We have to stop seeing a single economic unit comprised of multiple people, and instead see multiple individuals with different needs part of a larger community, and base all of our policy decisions accordingly. It'd be really great if those housing prices fell 30% in the next couple years, because I want, you know what kind of house I want? I want a craftsman house. They don't call them that out here, and they don't call them that in the Midwest, but on the West Coast, particularly in Los Angeles and San Francisco, there are a ton of these craftsman houses. And I made a few AI generated versions of them a few weeks back that I posted on here. And that's the kind of house I'm looking for. And those are generally small houses. In fact, I think I'd have to add an additional bathroom, because those houses were built in like the 20s and 30s. So commonly, houses only have one bathroom in those days. It was very rare for you to have multiple bathrooms unless you were rich. This is what I'm talking about. This is a craftsman house. Honestly, this one is seems like it might be a little too big. I know this is an AI image, but this is the style of house I'm kind of talking about here. And I'm making plans now. I'm paying down some debt. I'm trying to get my credit score past 750. I'm really, really close to that. I'm looking to pay off my car in the next 18 months. And I want a craftsman house. So when I came across this article, this is good news for me, because if those prices go down just in time for me to buy a home, I could get me a nice craftsman-esque little house, maybe here, maybe in Chicago, and I could be back with my friends and community, because I don't want to move again to rent. I feel like I'm finally ready to buy a home, because I know where I want my forever home to be. I know that I eventually want to go back to Chicago, and that's where I want to retire and be with my friends, because my romantic partner's there, and my entire community of friends, this great queer community, this great art community that I made friends with after my divorce, they are all in Chicago. So that's eventually where I want to be. And it would be great if in a couple years those housing prices go down and I could get a little house in the Northwest Chicago neighborhood somewhere. That would be lovely. So thanks to single lonely men, I can be even more independent and decidedly more masculine.